Salmon are iconic species that support ecosystems, communities, and livelihoods across the Pacific Ocean. Careful management of salmon populations and fisheries is incredibly important to ensure that these benefits are sustained for future generations. Since salmon know no borders, fish born in one country may migrate into another country to feed and grow, where they might be caught in a fishery before they can return home to spawn. Because salmon cross international boundaries, so must strategies for salmon management. In 1985, the United States and Canada agreed to cooperate on the management, research, and enhancement of mutually important Pacific salmon populations by ratifying the Pacific Salmon Treaty.
Today's exchange of instruments of ratification brings to a successful conclusion 15 years of negotiation. Thanks to this cooperative undertaking, endangered salmon stocks, which are so important to our respective west coasts, will now have a chance to rebuild to their former strengths.
The treaty outlines responsibilities for both nations that will help to manage salmon in a way that can prevent overfishing and provide for optimum production, and provide for each party to receive benefits equivalent to the production of salmon originating in its waters. In doing so, the parties shall take into account the desirability of reducing interceptions, the desirability of avoiding undue disruption in existing fisheries, and annual variation in abundance of stocks. One of the many places that salmon cross an international boundary is on the Yukon River. During their annual adult spawning run, Chinook, summer chum, fall chum, pink, and coho salmon enter this river system at the Yukon River Delta in Alaska. Only a portion of the Yukon River Chinook, fall chum, and coho salmon runs migrate into Canadian waters of the Yukon River. The remainder of these runs, and all summer chum and pink salmon, remain in Alaska. Some headwater stocks migrate over 1,800 miles, or almost 3,000 kilometers, to reach their spawning grounds in Canada's Yukon Territory. The agreement focuses specifically on Canadian Chinook and fall chum salmon stocks originating in the Yukon River. The Yukon River Panel includes 12 members, 6 from each country, and meets at least twice a year to conduct its work. The main responsibility of the Yukon River Panel is to oversee the implementation of the Yukon River Salmon Agreement and to make recommendations to the parties to achieve the overall objectives of the agreement. This includes rebuilding and conserving stocks and benefiting the fisheries of both countries. The panel is also responsible for the Yukon River Salmon Restoration and Enhancement Fund, a $1.2 million annual allocation that supports programs directed at the restoration, conservation, and enhancement of Canadian origin salmon stocks, developing stewardship of salmon habitat and resources, and maintaining viable salmon fisheries in Canada.
I think what I've really enjoyed about the panel is we've really tried to ensure that we represent all aspects of salmon. I think quite often, the science has its place and it's very important and we rely on it. But the communications and outreach and stewardship are really, really important. And I think maintaining that connection to the resource and the salmon for all is really a way that we can keep things going while we either try to figure out what's happening or the salmon themselves figure out what's happening, and we hope they can rebound by conservation, which is really one of the biggest tools we have.
Since its creation, the Yukon River Panel has made many lasting contributions to the resilience of salmon across the Yukon River. Over this period, the panel has held more than 60 meetings and distributed over $20 million through its R&E fund to support science and stewardship projects that are aimed at improving restoration, conservation, and enhancement of Canadian origin salmon stocks. These projects have increased our understanding of salmon run timing, spawning, genetics, and habitat, while also bringing resource users together to help support and protect the resource for the future. The many successful initiatives supported by the R&E Fund have left a lasting mark on Yukon River salmon management. As the challenges faced by salmon continue to multiply, it's more crucial than ever that this important work continues.
We've made a lot of progress in the last 20 years, but in the next 20 years are just as important. You know, we haven't solved all the problems, but we've established a very good base of communication and for cooperation of working together. And that doesn't mean we solved all the problems, but we've set the stage for solving the problems and working on problems over the long term, which I think is the really important thing.